We're all friends here, I think. Well, I mean, at least I'm friends with everybody. Alright. Turnout is pretty lame today, nobody's up. Oh, that's because I haven't put it on Twitter yet. Okay, I will tweet out that I'm streaming and then we can start. Oh, man. Why are you up at 4:50 in the morning watching my stream? Like, that's like life choices. Here we go. Alright, I think we're ready. Alright, what's up, what's up, what's up? I'm kind of having some trouble getting into the stream mood today. Not really sure why, so excuse me if I'm a little low energy today. But I think it's gonna come back eventually. I'm just a little overwhelmed with various life things. So here we are. Let me just reset that timer. And we're off. So, what's up everybody? Welcome to my new track breakdown stream. Today we're doing Space Odyssey, which is the first track off my album. So yeah, I'll start by just running through the track once, and then we can start talking about every single section and what I've done in each of them. So, let's have the track. I hope it's not gonna lag, because, well, it uses a lot of CPU, and I don't know how well it's gonna do while I'm streaming. If it does lag, I'll start turning plugins off, just so that it works. So yeah, here we are. So that was the track. And I think I just deleted the piano. No I didn't. Alright, so we're good. So yeah, that was the track. I'm not sure where I'm gonna start. And also, if you have questions about it, you can ask in chat, but I'm not sure how much attention I'm gonna be able to pay to the chat. I'll try to do my best, but I'll probably have like a separate kind of ask me questions session at the end again, so it might be better to keep the question until the end and then ask me when I'm focused on it. Because I have a lot of trouble with keeping up with chat and also doing this. So yeah, yeah, I am talking. Good. So the first thing in the track, those cinematic sounds. So this is just a timpani strike. I got it from Generdin, which is a it's a sound well, I guess they do like scoring for trailers and stuff. I used to work there a while ago, but now I don't. I still have some samples though, so this is something that they sent me, which is nice. And this one is obviously from a Kashmir pack. I think Kashmir Sounds Volume 2 or something. Volume 1. So that's... I just really chose that because it helps so much when your track opens on a really bombastic and big note. So it's just like, it smashes you in the face right away. You only have to play it for 5 seconds and you know something big is about to happen. Then of course, another hit. Probably from from the same pack that I got from Generdin. Great company, great people, they make great stuff. You should check them out. They sell some sample packs over at Splice, I believe, but I'm not sure. Either way, so the second thing that comes in is this pad. Which I really like. So first off, these chords. They're really just regular saw chords, some low pass on them. I also added an octave over here with the harmonizer. That just really adds that, I'm not sure what to call it, but it sounds a little more vintage that way because it's octaved. So that's really, really nice. Use harmonizer a lot on these chords. I also used that in the previous project, Go Back Home in Time. The previous project I was showing on the stream. And you notice that something special is going on with these chords. There's a prism, what do you call that? It's the prism function. It's kind of like a pitch shifting thing inside of Hammer, which I'll come back to later in the stream. But just remember that this is on the chords. Another layer on these chords, these leads over here. So they just kind of come in on top of the chords. Super retro. I love that. And part of what makes this so great is the fact that I'm automating the vibrato on them. So the note starts and there's no vibrato. But as this pulls up, the vibrato comes in. That makes that low decay a lot more interesting. So you can see the filter ends there. And as the filter ends, that just starts oscillating, which is very cool. Just makes the note a lot more sustained. And yeah, of course here, just a minor chord, and then to run with the whole Phrygian dominant, which is the mode thing in my track, I'm just basically copy-pasting this one chord up and down. Okay, excuse that. Except over here we're switching to major, yeah. So the whole feeling of the track relies on that minor and major contrast and that little second there. Has that kind of like Arabic type of feel, I guess. That's from the Phrygian dominant mode. Very nice. So the way that lead sits on top of the chords helps make these simple chords sound a little more complex. So because they're going up in pitch and they start having, like, that's a major third, yeah? So they kind of go up. Then the tension just peaks here. Of course, on top of all of this, there's a little lead going on, which is down here. Let me take a look. Do I have a reference track in here? No. Wait, I do. But it's muted, so it's fine. So the lead. Gotta turn the sidechain off. So that lead down there, basically, again, it's just Harmer. And it sounds a lot like pulse width modulation, but what I'm really doing is I have a bandpass on it, so that bandpass is going up and down. And then that's being distorted over here, and then I have some chorus to make it softer, because without the chorus it sounds a little dead. Like, that's cool, but with the chorus it starts moving a little. And also some delay, because without the delay, just didn't feel sustained enough. And then on that, there's just Effector, which is a nice little filtering plugin from ImageLine. Has a lot of small things like flangers, phasers, filters. I guess that's like a low-pass filter. And then you got distortion, reverb, delay, like everything you could imagine, just in a nice XY shape. And I used the flanger on that because it's really easy to control. So like you dial in 8 bars, and then you just can decide the amount of modulation. Very nice effect. See, like without that, it sounds like just a saw. But with that, it starts getting that really phase, pulse width modulation kind of sound, which is nice. And then down here, just some EQ, some surgical EQ to fit into the mix better, because it had a little too much mid-range, was a little too warm, not bright enough. Well, anyway, so that's it for the lead. I'm automating the amount of vibrato down here. No, sorry, that's not vibrato, that's actually the filter. So that is pretty cool. That's it for that section, I suppose. We're hit with our first bass line. Really just following the same notes that we had down here in the chords. Same thing. I'm using the Poly 6. Yeah, this one. Very nice. And there's not much on it. There's some reverb, some EQ. So if I take it off, what you're gonna notice in a lot of these tracks is there's a lot of modulation with flangers going on, where it's going up and down really slowly. And I like to do that, like just have a lot of different things modulated in different patterns and have them sync up differently and desync differently. So without that, it's just really too in your face, but with that, gives it that rising and falling thing, and that creates tension, especially when the start of it is the falling part, and then the end of it kind of pulls up. So then over there it kind of... That's really important that you have some kind of element. If you have a flanger on it, then it should be pulling up towards the point where the tension sits. So right here, that's where the flanger should be at the peak, right there on bar 21. So that's the modulation on this thing. There's a bit of reverb, which is just to make it sound a little more spacey, I guess. Could have gotten away without the reverb, I guess. And the rest is kind of just mixed stuff, saturation a little bit. Gonna make it a little fatter. Oh, of course, the drums. So there's a lot going on here. Let me take off all the effects. Yep. That doesn't sound very impressive now, does it? Literally just from a sample pack that I made. Well, I compiled it from multiple smaller samples. So very dry, very bare bones. I pitched them. I put some EQ on them just to really get that peak on the kick out. Just lift it to the foreground. And then that has a lot of things going on. There's a disperser on it, which is really just to make that low-end decay a little slower. Since these short vintage kicks, they usually have a really quick decay, so without the disperser, it sounded a little weak. Wait, let me mute my... Oh, thanks for the follow, Breeze3. I appreciate that. So that's disperser. Then this is the main thing that's causing this to sound crazy. The Tal Reverb 2, it's free, you can download it, and I try to use it. I make it very, usually make a larger room size and some pre-delay so that it has kind of a separation from the initial transient. So if I had no pre-delay, it kind of drowns, but if I have 37 or so pre-delay, then the reverb starts way after that kick. Makes it a little better, a little tidier. Then there's a phaser. I'm using the same trick on these drums as I was using on the Go Back Home in Time kick drum. The phaser is static, so there's no modulation. The depth is 0, rate is at 0. I'm really just using it as an EQ, sort of. So it kind of softens everything up. Or, I guess in this case it makes everything crazier. It's kind of unpredictable with these feedback plugins. But yeah, EQ. And then I had to control that, so I compressed it. And that ended up giving me a really nice tone. So then, just like that. That felt a little too much. I felt a little too much focused on the downbeats and not enough sustained groove. But I didn't want to add hi-hats, so what I did, I added a delay, which basically just plays quarter notes. Very nice. And then some very surgical EQ to fix the boominess and lift out the high end. Yeah, sometimes you need a bunch of gain reduction, especially when you're doing parallel compression. So with parallel, you would compress a little more than you usually do, but then you fade in some of the dry signal, so that way it gets a little, it's kind of a different effect than if you just compress it a little less. So if I compare these here, if I turn off the dry completely, yeah, that sounds bad. Really overcompressed, but as I mix them together, I get more attack on my drums. Because the compressor has a little bit of lag time, and then I'm mixing in the dry signal, so it's kind of like as if I'm highlighting the start of the drums and then pushing the rest down a little. It gives me a more consistent tone in this case. I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little quieter, because really pushing into the limiter pretty hard. This isn't the final project. The final project has a little bit more mastering and mixing on it than this. But I only have this one. I put the other one on some other hard drive, so I can't really open it right now. But that's not really a problem, because everything's here. I can show everything off. So yeah, that's for the drums. So in the writing over here, we're really just building more tension the same way that we did back here. So this 8-bar sequence from 5 to 13, 5 to 13, let's say. That 8-bar sequence is really just repeating over and over, and every time the end of that sequence happens, I'm building tension and there's going to be a change up. So here I got... all the elements in the track that we just talked about are kind of rising up to that moment. And then we have our big moment over here with the huge chords. So we're building up to this the entire time, and then we finally reach that big major chord. Very simple, but very effective. I'm bringing back the same timpani strike as from the start of the track, but this time I'm also doubling it up with this impact and the kick from that breakdown. And I am also bringing in various effect sounds that I'll discuss later on in the breakdown, because I could talk about these for hours. We gotta have some structure here. I'm gonna focus on the main stuff that's up here first, and then I'm going to get into all the effect stuff down there. So if you wanna have these explained, then just don't worry about it. We're gonna get to them later. So this is where our first big build-up starts, towards the drop that happens over here at bar 29. We arrive at that large chord. And then the same sequence, as we've had two times already, repeats a third time, except this time we're really going for it. We're really building it up hard with a lot of automations, a lot of things. So I'm gonna let that play. So there's a lot going on here. I'll start breaking it all down from top to bottom. So over here, I bring in a reverse snare. That just helps me introduce that next hit. It's kind of like the high end, like the high end air to transition into the build up. Nice little slapping sound. Then down here, I got this riser. I actually made that riser in a separate project. So what it is I got a sine wave and I got a little bit crusher on it, and I'm raising the pitch of the sine wave. So because of the bit crusher, it's creating aliasing distortion. So I mean, I can demonstrate that real quick. Let's say I got Harmor open. I use the sine wave just over here, and I put that on a new track. Whoops. New track. So I put some kind of sample reducer on this. So you can hear a little bit of distortion. So as I bring the pitch up closer and closer to the top of that. Whoops, that's really loud. The pitch actually sounds like it's going down again. So as I keep going up, I guess this plugin isn't good to demonstrate that with. Let me get Saturn, because this is how I did it in the original track. So I got that over here. Yep, here we go. So the reason this is happening is because I'll show it visually over here. So that's our sine wave down here, ignore that up there. And what destroy does, it actually reduces the sample rate so that the higher the frequency goes, the less likely it is to be played correctly. So as we approach a certain level, a certain frequency, like, I don't know, 1 kilohertz or something, it's going to start folding back down. You see that? So it kind of wraps down, and the further we go up, the quicker it starts wrapping back down. So I basically just put an ascending sine wave into that destroy thing from FabFilter, and they gave me that. So that's just one of the many sounds that I'm using here to create tension. I also use this rising sound from Squat Pack. It's their future sample pack over here, so you can probably get that Squat Pack Audio Future. And I'm using this. So the way I did this was I literally just went into a different project and I opened Contact. I put a random string preset on it, and I started putting higher notes and higher notes and higher notes, just making that ascending kind of thing. So there's no magic here, it's not a sample pack, I just literally put ascending notes. I think I even automated the pitch on that thing, I'm not sure though. Then we have this. That's me breathing into a microphone, like, and then it's pitched up so that I sound a little younger. See if I got the original sound. Yeah, now you can hear that it's me. Sorry. I sound pretty dumb. But I edited it so that I sound... I mean... without the filter. There you go. Sounds a little younger than I am. I just did that by pitching it up. So what you're gonna notice with a lot of these sounds is that there's that kind of wah-wah filter on it. I'm not sure which channel that is on, but I will try to find it. Let me see. Over here. So it's Effector. I'm using the phaser setting on Effector, and I'm automating the speed at which it goes up with that tempo knob. So that tempo knob controls the speed at which the X and Y of the phaser are being modulated. X being the frequency and Y being the phaser width. So that's what gives it that weird vocally sound that keeps getting faster. And it helps add a lot of tension to the whole thing. So like, without it, it just kind of, peaks somewhere and doesn't go up. That's just one thing that I'm doing here, on top of all these other things. In my opinion, it added a lot, but it's up to whatever you want to do in your tracks, I suppose. Also, it sounds pretty funny. So, let me see. All of this stuff, literally all of it, is going into that one channel, which I called Break Synths. And that Break Synths channel has Pro C2 on it. Again, parallel compressing, which gives the whole thing a little more loudness, a little more density, a little more thickness. Then some reverb, just to kind of unify everything, put it in one room. The filter, of course, limiter for sidechain, and then a couple EQ touch-ups. And this one I'm automating. I'll come back to that EQ later. So let me see. There's something I haven't explained about these chords yet, up there, these chords. You can kind of hear how the pitch gets a little weird, a little crooked, a little confused at the end of that chord. not that one, over here. So the reason that's happening is because I am actually automating this prism knob. So as this goes up... Oh, nice. Storm7951, thank you for the host. Welcome, whoever joined. So I'm not sure if that's easy to see, but the individual harmonics of the sound start getting moved up and down. They kind of converge and disperse in different points. So if I open Hammer here and I go to my prism, the harmonic prism, reset. Oh, thanks whoever followed. I think that was a follow. Yeah, Prune Official, thank you very much. So that's what the prism does. So very unusual effect that you wouldn't usually put on anything. But of course, because it's unusual, I'm gonna use it. So I have that open, and it's kind of fading in at the end. So you play... You can notice that here. By the end of it, it's just not even harmonic anymore. But that adds to the overall spacey and messed up vibe that this thing has. Like, it just makes it a little creepier, a little stranger, a little dissonant, which is very nice for this kind of track. Anyway, yeah, so the build-up happens. So what you're gonna notice here is, well, or maybe you're not gonna notice it, but if I put Edison on this, then we can actually look at it. Let me see, Edison, over here. So I record that. So again, this is really hard to notice, but I have a little silent gap in between the build-up and the drop. So here there's nothing. Literal silence. Nothing. Quiet. So that helps separate this from the rest. Because if you have a sweep going into the kick, and you have some kind of master limiter or master compression on it, then the master compression is going to be responding to this sweep up. So that means the compressor is pulled down, and then the kick comes in, and that first kick doesn't sound hard because the compressor is being pulled down. But the second kick is going to sound fine. So you don't want that. You want the start of the drop to hit with full force. So, and you're going to notice if I cut that away, I actually get a clean kick. So I could technically go and I could, you know, there you go, and now I can use that kick in my own song. That's how clean this shit is. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of a lot of stuff that I do has to do with cutting something out, having a little bit of silence in front of something else. I think I'm literally automating everything to be silent at that point. Yeah, over here, limiter. So there's like a limiter that just pulls everything down to complete silence, and over here as well. So I could move that to the left, and then we only have that breathing sound. Sounds pretty funny. But yeah, I didn't put it here in the track, I put it over there, which is why it sounds good. And then we move into that heavy drop section, which is just absurd. So what I did was, I'll just start with the kick, why not? So I took this kick from a retro drum pack. The kick sounds like this. Yeah, that's the kick. It's a nice kick, but it's just not fit for this kind of drop. So what I did was, I actually opened Bassism 2 and added a little sub kick myself. And then those go together like bread and butter. Then I had that snare over here. On its own, it sounds like this. So not really ideal, but I edited it so it's a little more hard. So let me just start with that one. I high passed that one and low passed it. so that's more focused on the mid-range because that's where we need it. We need it to really peak out at 1-2 kilohertz. So I pushed it hard with an EQ, 6 decibels of boosting over there. And then this one, the bassism, has a low pass on it. So now you're going to see that the two kick drums are really not intersecting that much. I'm cutting it off at roughly, let's see, roughly 200, 150 hertz, something like that. And then this one is cut off at 200 hertz as well. So they kind of just meet up there. One thing you're going to have to pay attention to when you layer two kicks like that is phasing. So this button right here flips the phase rotation of a channel in FL Studio. So if I flip this back and forth, you're going to notice a huge difference between the sounds. Let me just demonstrate that real quick. So especially with these kind of crossover filters where you low pass something and then you high pass something else to make it fit together, you have to pay attention to the phasing and the timing of it. And that way you might be able to get a cleaner or more intense kick depending on what you want. So then these two go over here, and there's of course a little disperser over here, and that disperser just helps, it delays the low frequencies and that makes the kick a little bouncier. So without it, wait, let me just, so quite a subtle difference, but I feel like with the disperser, it's a little less clean, a little bouncier, and I felt like that was more interesting than without the disperser. I guess without the disperser, it would be a little cleaner overall, like it would be a cleaner kind of mix, a cleaner kick. So yeah, then I use this compressor called Nightshine. Actually, let me disable all of this. That's pretty boring. So I had to beef it up. I put Nightshine on it, which is a free compressor you can download. I'm not sure who makes it, but it's nice. So without that, it's just a little schoolboy kind of kick, but with it enabled, it gets a little harder. It adds that nice little transient to it. And then of course, I distort it with the tube setting. So the tube setting, it works differently from regular distortion. So if I change it to a tape setting, see, that just sounds a little too hard, a little too clipped. But with the tube, you get a warmer kind of distortion because you have even and odd harmonics in the distortion. That's really, really cool, in my opinion. And I like to use tube distortion on many, many things, on many drums, just because it sounds hard, sounds good, I like it. And then I'm clipping it. However, that clipper is not doing that much for the kick itself yet. It's actually working harder on the snare. So I'll start explaining the snare at this point. So the kick and the snare go together into that one channel, just for the record. That's why I'm disabling these plugins so that we can take a look at the dry snare and how I got to the final result. So, yeah, that's the snare. It's pretty loud. That's just how it sounds, I guess. So that's snare. This is literally the snare without effects on it. I guess that's just what it is. Whatever. So that snare has some EQ on it to remove some resonances that I didn't like, some spikes that I didn't like. I'm currently wondering how I'm getting the sound out of that snare. That's crazy. I guess I'm just really cranking the volume high, so it's being clipped because of how loud the volume is. What's going on here? Let me just diagnose this real quick. So I got the snare. It's going in here. It's going in there. No, everything's fine. Yeah, so the snare is just really loud, and that's why it sounds so distorted and so different. EQ to remove some of the unpleasant resonances and high end. And then this is the critical part. There's some saturation on it, of course. Again. Oh, this time it's warm tape. Thought it was tube. Anyway, this is the critical part. So you're gonna notice if I play these together, like that, the kick and the snare kind of, they ride on top of each other, and it doesn't sound very pleasant. It sounds like the snare is just sitting there and kind of ruining the kick's attack and the kick's impact. It doesn't sound pretty to me. So I decided to actually sidechain the kick to the snare with Love Filter. So every time the kick hits, the snare is being pulled down exactly this way. So you got a little bit of that initial snare impact, but then the part where the kick is punching is totally, that's where the snare is totally gone. So if I enable that, you should be able to hear a difference real quick. So now the snare is being ducked, which gives the kick enough space and makes it tidies up the overall groove of the track. So yeah, that sounds pretty hard to me. And then of course, this clipper right here exists. It works a little harder because I'm trying to push the noise that the snare creates back down into the kick. So without that, you can see and you can hear there's not a lot of difference in how it sounds, but it kind of peaks a lot higher when there is no clipping on it. So this is kind of one of the cases where you can just transparently clip something without really having to worry about how it's going to sound in the end. And then another thing that all of these saturations and everything, well, I think over here we've got a tube, right? So that tube kind of adds a little bit tonality to the kick. So instead of just being a clean low end, it has that kind of tone to it. So you should be able to hear that the kick has a couple harmonics down there. Hello? Yeah, that happens. So I have mute and unmute bound to minus and plus, so sometimes I'll mess it up and I'll say it wrong. Anyway, so what I was saying was that's all for the drums. They're just a little bit saturated so that the kick has a little bit of a tone to it instead of just being a clean kick, because sometimes it's better to oversaturate something than to have it clean. Has a little more impact, sounds a little more rough and hard. Okay, so moving on to the bass sound. As some of you have noticed, it's really just one patch. There's just not a lot of patches. It's really just one patch in the entire track. All of the basses you're hearing is just one patch. So we start off over here with, let me just solo it. So this is going to be really hard to break down because it goes through so many channels, so many layers. It starts off in channel 20 over here, where I'm really just there's some dynamic EQ going on to kind of make all of these different timbres that the synth is putting out a little more consistent, give it all a little bit more consistent frequency range, because if you don't control that, then it's just all over the place and it doesn't sound good. So the processing here is really insane. I'm using 3 channels on FL Studio. You can link channels in serial, so that goes from channel 3 to channel 4, and then channel 4 goes to channel 2, and then that goes to channel 1. So let's see, 8 slots per track. 1, 2, 3. About 24 effects plugins just to get that bass sound. So if I turn them all off, it sounds like this. Not very interesting. So that's what it sounds like without any effects. So going through the first channel then, first off I put, I guess OTT is totally irrelevant. What am I using? I don't know. So this is just an EQ. This isn't used right now. This is used in a later part of the track. Vocodex. So that vocodex is really just there to create a more wet kind of timbre. I'm also using the internal EQ of vocodex to kind of highlight in the different ranges where I want it, and it's in parallel. So some reverb to make it sound like it's in a cabinet, kind of like a guitar or something. Disperser. I put that disperser in parallel to create a bit of a guitar amp kind of sound. Because what disperser is, it's a series of all passes with delays on it. So when you put it in parallel, you get phaser or flanger style comb filtering, right? So you get little notches all across the track, and you can customize how they look and where they are using the pinch and the amount. So that way disperser just becomes kind of like a cabinet simulator. I can demonstrate that if you want. Let me see. So I put 3x oscillator with a noise on a new channel, and I can't hear it. Here we go. And then I add disperser. And as I put disperser in parallel, you're going to hear that things start getting kind of phased out. So that's what I'm adding to the bass with this. I'm not sure if disperser is usually used that way, but that's what I do with it a lot of the time. I just add it as a kind of phasing effect, because it's a little more flexible than just a phaser. You can do a lot of things with the pinching and with the amount, just have a lot of different phaser shapes with it. Then of course Saturn. Just I guess it's just some compression to like get all the different timbres into in the same range, and some EQ. I said EQ. So now we're getting a little closer to the final sound. Generally, a lot of sound design is in EQing. So if you do good EQ, then you're gonna get a better sound, and that's what I was trying to do here. Just kind of find problem frequencies and tweak and tweak and tweak. It takes a lot of time to really find them, and you have to do it in context. So you have to listen to the rest of the mix and like compare everything together, and then you'll be able to find these problem frequencies. Can't really do it on your own. Can't really do it in solo. And then there's just compression. So then I had this bass like that, and I sidechained it. Let me see. I'll disable everything except for the sidechain. Yeah, here we go. So I had that, and I was like, okay, I'm not really happy with this. This has to be a lot more heavy, a lot more crazy. So I put it on a new channel, and I started adding all kinds of things. These are mostly automation things. But over here I got like a wave shaper, and that's just a crazy amount of clipping, just clipping it like hell. And now we're getting there. So the majority of that is just coming from the clipping. That over here is an EQ that I put before the clipper, and it's mostly to control the high end, because I had random stereo stuff going on in the high end. So if I disable that, if you listen to the high end, I can kind of hear it on these speakers. I'm not sure if you can. Well, whatever. That stereo information sounded kind of confusing, especially on headphones. So I actually went in, I filtered that out Very unconventional, but it's got to be done. Sounded a lot more tidy to me. Okay, so then it goes into channel 2, and again, there's a lot of EQing because this is basically just trying to clean up the mess that I made in the sound design. So because there's a lot of effects and a lot of things going on, there's a lot of peaks that don't sound good or don't feel good in the track, and that's really what this is, just a really long cleanup. And then this clipper again, what I'm doing is, because of the EQing, I have a lot of peaks in the sound again now, so I'm clipping them off again with this. Yeah, that seems kind of counterintuitive, but I ended up doing it and it worked out because, I don't know, it was just like, I don't really want these peaks, and I also don't really want to remove that EQ or redo it, so I just opted to EQ and then clip it off. I'm wondering if my chat is broken. Is nobody chatting right now, or is something broken? Just type something in chat so I can make sure it's not actually broken. Okay, so then I got a dynamic EQ on that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just had to make sure that everything's working, because it would be kind of a shame if I kept talking and people were asking me a lot of crazy shit and I was just not looking at it. That would be really embarrassing. Anyway, that dynamic EQ serves to kind of unify the high end on every single sound. So every time it goes above a certain threshold, it just pulls it down, and that keeps the level consistent up here where it matters. Like, this is a region that tends to sound really bad on car speakers or AirPods or anything like that. So if that region up there, 11 kilohertz and above, is not balanced, then you're gonna have trouble on a lot of systems. And I had a lot of troubles with this track on a lot of systems, so I had to really make sure that this wasn't happening anymore. And then this, I'm not sure what this is. I guess I brought some of that high end back now because it was more consistent. So when it's more consistent, I can push it further. Yeah, I think that's about it. This here is just... yeah, this is just an automation. Okay, so that's it for the effects chain on this. Let's get to the sound itself, actually. So... so, like, what's going on here? It doesn't sound anything like the thing that I'm showing you. Well, I'm automating the cutoff, like the filter of the of that bass right here. So that's every time it goes to the right. So I've linked that over here. No, I didn't. I've linked that. No, what did I link? Well, you can hear that I linked something. I'm not sure what I linked. Let me go find it. Oh, pluck amount. Okay, so Harmor has this feature called pluck. If I open Harmor, I've got a saw wave, but if I turn on pluck, you can hear that it kind of turns into a pluck, obviously. But what's happening here is the pluck function, actually what it does is it maps a different decay to every harmonic in the saw wave, or whatever wave you're editing. So if I push this down, it's just gonna map these decays to different frequencies. So if I make a little stair here, for example, I've got like a stair going on, then that stair shows over here as well. See? So I can draw any shape I want in here, and this controls the time it takes for that to happen. So if I make it really short or really long, then I can change that here. So that allows for a lot of interesting combinations. So for example, this. you can do a lot of stuff with that, but I just used it as kind of a pluck control. Whoops. So I don't even think, no, there's nothing going on with the pluck itself. It's just a regular standard shape that Homo comes with. So I'm really just using this as a articulator for the pluck. Moving on. So you're gonna hear that the sound doesn't just stay at one level. Like, let me turn this off. So now it's really just a saw. But when I add this automation back, you can hear that the timbre kind of goes up, especially here. So if I turn that off, so what's going on over here is I am actually automating the detune. And the detune in Homo works a little differently than it does in other synths. So detune over here, you can see that number jump from 6 to 14, then to 9. See that? So what this really does is, when you have a saw, let me just disable that. So you have a saw, for example, and then you turn on the detune. You suddenly have a square. Because what this does is, let me find a... Yeah. So what detune does is, it takes the frequency, it takes the mask from the timbre 2 harmonic level settings over here, and then it actually shifts the selected frequencies. Like here I've got all the, I guess these are all the even harmonics, I think. No, these are all the uneven harmonics, and it shifts them up or down. So if I shift all of the harmonics up, like you can see that here, so this harmonic is being shifted up, that harmonic is being shifted up, that harmonic is being shifted up, that harmonic is being blah blah blah. What that means is, it's not actually changing the individual harmonics. It's just pushing this into that one, which makes this one twice as loud, right? You can see that by the brightness change. So without it, and with it, you can see that over here. I'm gonna try to play a lower note. See, it gets quieter, it gets... I think that should be easy to see over here. I'm not sure if you can see it on the stream, but that's what's happening over here. So that means we can increase this to absurd levels. Can also go in the other direction. So what this bass line is really doing is, it's a saw, and then I'm automating this. So that's what's going on here. Of course, when I automate it, it's a little smoother because I'm using all those smaller increments, so... That's what the bass line is doing, but really fast and with these patterns over here, so... So then not only am I doing that, I'm also multiplying the actual frequency of the saw itself. So over here, if you look at frequency, it jumps to 1.9 every now and then. So without that, it's the same as at the start. But then I'm automating this as well. And that gives a little more jumpiness. Especially over here at that fill part at the end. So if I have that fill playing, just play all the tracks. See, that sounds really different. That sounds ridiculously different from what I have in the actual track. Because in the track I'm also automating frequency. That sounds a lot more aggressive, a lot more varied, a lot more complexity in the sound. So that's the main three modulations, detune and frequency multiplicator. So frequency is basically just pitch. So if I use a normal saw wave, like here, and I turn up the frequency, it's really just changing the pitch. Pretty normal stuff. But anyway, yeah, I decided to do it that way because what happens then is you can have one bass sound and you can automate all of these things, and then because it's running through so many plugins and reacting to so many different things, like, it's kind of like butterfly effect. If you change the source slightly, then everything else reacts totally differently and you get something really crazy going on. And that's the same principle that I used on the EQ up here. Like this EQ up here, it's crazy, but it's also not enabled right now. Because the reason for that is, I'm using it over here in a much later part of the track. So here, right? It's the same sound, I'm just EQing it. So without the EQ, it sounds like this. And with the EQ, yeah, so there's nothing really going on here. It sounds like some kind of crazy frequency modulated kind of sound, but really it's the same thing with some crazy EQ on it. And because it's going through 20 plugins, all of it reacts differently. So yeah, but if you want to do that, you have to do a lot of stuff to control everything. So you have to have dynamic EQs, and you have to have compression, and all kinds of pretty stuff. So if you want to do this method, prepare to do a lot of controlling and a lot of clipping and a lot of compressing and EQing and blah blah blah. So have fun. That's really, yeah, that's not fun. So yeah, it happens over here as well with the EQ. So it's only active for that short split second. I'm automating it here. I like that sound. It's so cool. This over here. Ah, that's so cool. It reminds me of that Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites bass. And these are just toms. Whatever, so that's it for the bass sound for now. There's probably some more stuff going on, but we'll get to that as we progress through the track. So I did drums. Yeah, right over here. That reverse sound. Comes up multiple times throughout the track, and then I also have that smaller thing. And then that classic reverb over there. What this does is, it really just fades in a reverb. It's down here. No, it's not. Where is it? It's over here, yeah. So that is really just used to make it roomy for a split second and then bring it back. That makes it sound like it's fading out. Add some roominess over here. So without that, it sounded a little too dry. It's like, what just happened? Like, did the track end? No, it's going on. So that really helps make things more musical when you do little sweeps like that. And of course the sweep ends slightly before the next drum hit. So the drop builds up a little more here after 8 bars. It's kind of like, it just repeats a pattern and then it has a little fill section. A little impact down here. And this is really the same as from last track breakdown where I did Go Back Home in Time. Have that kind of just one tom sample, but it's being triggered really quickly at the start. I don't think there's much on this in terms of processing. That's probably just an EQ, yeah. Oops. And that's really just to make sure that the last tom hit is not too powerful, but we can keep the impact of the first ones. So I'm kind of cutting away the low end here, but I keep that intact. Makes it more musical. Right, so then I bring in these hi-hats. So what's special about these hi-hats is they come from the Casio PT68. I can't look at that right now, but if I go here, what you're going to notice is that these hi-hats kind of have a pitch to them, right? So when I take this, you can hear that? I can play a song with that. Like, that's what's going on in here. So if we look at that sample in detail, wow, that's really hard to see, but these little, you can see that little spiky pattern in there. That spiky pattern, oh, what did I just do? Okay, that's something I didn't know about. That little spiky pattern in there is kind of like superimposed harmonics on top of the hi-hat. So I'm not sure how they get that. I guess it comes from kind of a comb filter situation, but I'm not sure. I haven't read up on the history of that. Despite that, I'm musically using it in the song, so yeah. So they are tuned. They are tuned to be a semitone above the bass's pitch. So the bass is playing, I think, an F. No, the bass is playing an E, and then the hats are playing an F. I'm not sure if you can hear that on stream. I can hear it here. What did I just do? Oh. So yeah, they're tuned a semitone above the rest, which you can do with these kind of hats. Where was I? Over here. And then those are doubled up with some regular random hats. I picked these because they're really spiky in the high end, so you can see I had to EQ them. But again, it has that tonality to it. Very sharp, stands out above the rest. Problem with a lot of hi-hats is that they're too noisy. And when something is noisy, it tends to slip into the background, which can be good, but in this case, I need these hi-hats to really stand out on top of that massive bass line. So I opted for that. It's also, again, parallel compression. In this case, the parallel compression felt a little more rhythmic because it made the hits a little more sustained, so they were more like 8th notes instead of just 16th notes. And then I'm really sidechaining them very hard over here, so without the sidechain. So yeah, that's very important. Lots of sidechaining on everything, and always LUF filter because it gives you the most control. You can also use LFO tool or a volume shaper or pan shaper, whatever, what have you. Various plugins. I just like LUF filter because it's easy access for me as an FL user. So yeah, so that plays out for a while. And that leads us to our first big fill section. So over here, there's nothing crazy going on. It's really just repeating. But then we come into that fill. That's where I'm bringing in that acid kind of 3-3 type sound. No, it's here. And this one is really special. Whoops. It's this one. So this is going into just its own channel. So this is really just a saw pluck, if I disable all the effects. So it's distortion on it. You can hear it's really just a saw pluck, little saw pluck doing nothing special, but then it's being distorted, and that's what creates that acidy sound. You gotta make sure to use a lot of resonance on your filter when you do that. Well, it's gonna be obvious to most of you who know sound design, but I'm explaining what I'm doing, so... That would be your normal sound with a lot of resonance. You can't have a weak filter, like... That's not gonna do anything, but if you put a lot of resonance on it... There you go, acidy as hell. Then you distort that, and you got yourself... You're 303ing now, basically. Sexy. So that's what I'm doing here. And then that is going into various plugins. I think the most critical one is probably... The classic groove is just adding a little bit of roominess. Nothing big. And then that... Destroy is kind of a bit crush clipper sample rate reduction kind of thing. So I'm really just reducing the sample rate on this. So you can basically... And it's for the same reason as on the sine wave, because as something approaches that imaginary barrier, like right here, it creates these small spikes. They're not easy to visualize, but if you look at them in EQ too, see that? That's the same principle as on the sine waves. So if I turn that off, nothing's going on. But if I turn it on, then this gets folded back up and back down. So that's what makes the sound more interesting. Then I EQ it to fit better into the mix. Side chaining, more EQ, just to make it sound really gritty. And then there's a little D&B break. So I'm not sure if this is like a well-known break. Is this even legal? Can I sample this? So I slowed it down. There's actually nothing on it. It's literally just... No, wait. I'm full of shit. Track 16. Just some EQ. Because without the EQ, it sounded a little too far back. So you want to bring out that punchy high end at 2 kHz, because that really cuts through the rest. But you want to limit that 5 kHz thing, because otherwise it's going to sound a little too... You don't really need that hi-hat. We need relief from the hi-hat in the drops. So we got that hi-hat here. Sorry. Very active at 5K, so now we need relief from that, which is why this is like that. Then of course there's this layer. What is this? So there's a sample pack called Hit Kit, which is, I'm not sure who made it. I'm not sure how I got it. Must have picked it up somewhere. So they give you that sample. They give you a lot of other samples. But obviously I'm going to choose this one. And I'm playing chords with that, minor chords, I think. Kind of a Mortal Kombat almost sound. See if I can... Yeah, you get the point. So they use this sample in a lot of Super Nintendo games and a lot of retro stuff, a lot of 80s songs. And Bruno Mars uses it a lot in his newer tracks. So, I don't know, it's just a really nice kind of rave stabby kind of retro-y and crazy together with that drum fill. Gotta take a drink. Talking a lot kind of dries out my throat, and then I need to take drinks as I'm talking, otherwise I just I can't deal with it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, retro section, retro acid bass, and then that climaxes into that little bass sweep, which is really just the normal bass that we already had over here, but with that EQ on it. So that EQ, let me find it, is really just a peak going from high to low. So if I take this in my own hands and I start, start messing with myself. Well, if I mess with it myself, it doesn't sound that good. But that's why I made it exactly in this shape. So it starts doing the right thing. It sounds very aggressive and very harsh. I love it. So then we get into that more stompy kind of... So what I'm doing over here is, it's really just that same bass line, but I think the first one is a different synth. Yeah. Whoops, sorry. So, let me see. I think this must be the same sound, but it's actually not. What did I do here? Oh, right. So what I did here was I took, I think it's this, yeah, I copied that bass patch that I had, and then I copied part A using that function, like copy part and then paste part, onto part B, where I changed the detune settings to 11, which created a kind of a high note. So if I go in and I change this, you can see. And the 11 just sounded the best to me. Like here, that sounds way too tonal to me. That sounds way too boring. And then this sounds a little too high. So that was just, the 11 was just perfect for me. So that's how that works. There's not really anything special going on modulation-wise on this. It's really just the sound. So this is the same all the time. Fading in the reverb over here, so that gives it that cabinet-type feedback. Pretty normal stuff. And then, of course, you can see how that is being... the frequency modulator is over here, so as I... Like, this is just the same pattern over and over. If I just open this in here... So nothing interesting, but because I'm automating it all here, so the pluck is modulated by that X modulation over here. So it opens up and then closes. Very simple, very to the point. Over here, the frequency modulator, you can hear that one. Just screaming out. Crazy. Yeah, that's how you shape a lot of different bass phrases from one patch. I actually got this idea from Apriska. He's a producer, I think. I'm not sure if he's on Monstercat now. I think he is. Apriska Luke. He gave me that idea because he had a track where he told me the way he did it was he had just one bass patch and he kept working on it and kept adding a lot of things to it. And then I basically sat down. I decided to do the same thing. So this is what I got from it. Very different results, but same methods. So over here, just some random Foley. A fat kick that I made a couple of years ago. So that really just, without that, it sounded too boring to me. Just really hits you hard. Yeah, this is also very important to the drop. So this is just white noise, but if I turn that off, so a little bit exaggerated there, but that's kind of what it does. And without that, it doesn't get that kind of pumping, rising, falling feeling. And I really wanted that here. I wanted this to be like the section where there's peak momentum, peak flow, peak punch, peak whatever. Just have more air in it. If you want to raise tension, just put air. I say that every stream, because it's true. Momo Bling asks, is that bassism? Yes, that is bassism. I always use bassism for basically everything. Just works. Nice for kicks. Probably good for some other stuff, but I like making my kicks with it because it enables me to make way too crazy kicks. Like, they're just way too big and you shouldn't really use them. Then I kind of tame them with my processing. But over here, it's just, I left the kick crazy. Nice. So over here, I got more of these hit sounds from that hit kit. I octaved them so they would sound more bright. And then they're heavily sidechained, very heavily sidechained, so that they really have that pumping feeling. Just really mixes nicely with that 11th detune timbre. Timbre. I keep saying timbre. 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 Whatever. How do you pronounce that? Does anybody in chat know? Timbre? Timbre? Timbre. It's a timbre. Yes, it's a timbre. Sorry. Where was I? Yep. I haven't, timbre. Thimble. Tomber. Thimble. I like thimble. Okay, so the 11th thimble. Down here I've got a little sound. That sound has been present over here as well. So I forgot to mention that over here. So that's just a little acid bass to accent the rest. Without it, it's just the same loop going on forever. But with it, it adds some A-B feeling. So that's very useful. And then over here, of course, the same thing. So I'm kind of just using that to fill empty spots. So whenever this is resting, I put a little bit of this in. So this is resting on one note here, and I put that on top. So that's kind of how you have to think of your instruments. It's kind of like you have an attention budget. You can only make someone focus on 3 sounds at once. So when this is resting, kind of, then this can move. And when this is moving, this should rest. So this is like moving, nothing. Resting. Resting. Yeah, resting up there, moving down there, and so on. You can see it's like, it's congruent. Is that what that means? Congruent? No. Ambivalent? Symbiotic? No, I don't know. They contrast each other. It's like yin and yang, right? So when this is working, this isn't. When this is working, that isn't. Whatever. And that carries over into that, of course. So you see, like, that is pulling down. And then this gives space for that. Right? So if I remove that, it sounds kind of boring. But now I got space for that acid. Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, symbiotic is what I was looking for. Your stereo mic is giving me yeah, like, I think that would be a funny comment to make if we were collecting donations for cancer instead of suicide, but this way. Whatever. I'm just being just pulling your leg. So yeah, that sound, I've already explained the other one, but this is really the same thing, except I have no unison on it. So this has unison and this doesn't. So if I put unison on this, I guess it's also, yeah, that down here, the compression is different. See, like, that's removing the highs, and that's boosting the highs, so that's more punchy. I don't think the filtering is actually different. It's a little bit different, yeah. But whatever. With acid sounds, you can do a lot of different things, especially with Hammer. I don't really use an actual 303 or any of that, or any 303 emulations. So I'm not really somebody to talk to about accuracy of these emulations and these synths and whatever, because I haven't really bothered, I haven't really thought about it. I kind of just, I try to replicate the sound that I want to have with whatever I can replicate it with. So if I can do it in Hammer, I will sit down and I'll do it in Hammer, because it does the job. It doesn't have to be very legit. Anyway. Not much going on here, it's just the same impact, but twice. Down here. The harsh acid can be made with just about any synth and it'll sound great. Sure, here's the reason I used Hammer for it. So Hammer is additive, and that means it's not actually using any filters. So when you quickly automate a filter, it tends to pull things up and down in pitch. But if I do it with the Hammer, then I don't really have that problem, which gives me very clean things to distort and clip and kind of do crazy shit with. So that was why I used Hammer in this case. I think if I made the same thing in Serum, for example, maybe there's a filter that can do it in Serum as well, but generally, in Serum, I've used the pitch drifting that the filters cause to my benefit. Yeah, in this case, it didn't really help. It's only really good if you're basing the track on that pitch drift. Well, anyway, that's some background information to that sound, I guess. Not really very useful. Unless you want to make the same sound. Just playing some stabby notes with the same patch again. And that high note really stands out. There's an acid wavetable in Serum, don't even need filters. Yep, I guess you could use that. That would be the equivalent of that, basically. Because there's no pitch drifting or anything on that. Very clean. I wonder if that acid wavetable compares to 303s and stuff, like if that has any kind of correlation or any kind of comparison between them. Or if it just sounds completely off. So this is just a little tom hit. That octave note is really important. Because it's right where the reverb is at max. So without that, it would sound very boring to me. So the octave note right there is doing everything for this part. Like, that's like a region in the song that we haven't really stimulated. So if you can look at it on the EQ, like it's gonna make a little fat spike up here. See that? Right there. That's a frequency that I'm kind of avoiding in the entire track, except for that part. So right on that part, I'm hitting really hard into that 100 something hertz. No, I guess it's like 90 hertz? I don't see. 70 hertz. Yeah, sure, I'll take that. So that's why this part is extremely important, extremely effective. Like usually when you have higher notes, you would filter them out so that they wouldn't bounce up and they wouldn't resonate louder than any other bass notes. But in this case, I think because I left it in, it has a lot of impact to it. Like it really just bounces the track up. Sounds huge to me. But yeah, I bet some kind of mixing engineer is probably sitting at home looking at this and like, oh my god, you're so bad at this. Generic stuff down there. So it just builds up here one more time, and then it goes into the melodic section. So I'm gonna play it from there. Well, that doesn't sound right. Maybe I forgot to. Yeah, I forgot to. Yeah, that's what I get for using the LUF filter as a sidechain. I forgot to enable it again, so now that was really messed up. It's supposed to sound like this. So I'm really keeping everything the same here, up here in that bass region. The only difference is that I'm bringing this chord in, so if I remove that, it's gonna go back to exactly what it was before. So there's nothing really, no magic happening here, nothing's changing about the bass. I'm just recontextualizing it by adding these chords. So because the chords are on top of the bass, it's all being recontextualized into this kind of Phrygian thing. Phrygian dominant, I'm sorry. So as for the actual melody that I'm using here, it's the same melody as back here. Whoops. So over here. So nothing's really different here. I'm starting off with minor over here. That's just like a regular minor chord, nothing's going on here. And then I have major. But I have a second in there. So it's like a major chord with a second. Oops, sorry. That just added a little bit more dissonance to the entire thing. Sounded more messy, sounded more interesting. Helps me break things down. And then up here, I'm kind of just putting a low pass filter on the entire bass section. Over here it is. So that down there, insert 2. Whoopsie, where is it? I guess it's on insert 4. I guess FL is lying to me. So very, very, very simple. Very simple, very normal. And then I got, what else do I have? Notice me, senpai. Wait, did you, hello, Modus? Did you host me, or what's going on? I'm very confused. You raided? That's weird. Did my raid alert... Yeah, no, I have alerts. That's the thing. I tested them before and they worked. And now they don't. Look. Here they are. They're literally here. Interesting. And they also worked before, so I'm really confused. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. No idea. Well, you know what? That's really, really disappointing. Yeah, I'm not sure, because I sat down and I actually made alerts for tonight. Like, I sat down and I made proper alerts, and now I can't. Yeah, I'm actually mad about this one, because I had a really good alert prepared for this. Should I fake the alert? So, over here. Yes, fake the alert. Okay, let me just... hold on. So I go over here. Streamlabs. What's happening? Anyway, so I go to like widgets, alert box. Alright, so actually, let's see if this works. So I got this, and if I click test raid, what happens then?
Ladies and gentlemen, former Mr.
It didn't even play correctly. I'll do it one more time just to see if it plays properly.
Ladies and gentlemen, former Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, former Mr.
Silence. Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on. The alerts, they just don't work. Like, even when I clicked on test raid, it also started doing the same sound twice at once, which was weird. I'm really not sure why it does that. Nothing seems to work with the Streamlabs website, because, like, this is really not my fault at this point. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, I was here explaining the chords. Let me see. So these chords are pitching up because of these slide notes. That gives them a little more rise and fall, makes them more impactful. Because when I had just these over here. Wait, do you have alert box on more than one scene in OBS? Yeah, I think so. Whoops. Let me see. So I have it over here. I remove that. Then I have it on many others. Well, I probably shouldn't do that on stream. You gotta duplicate and not have separate ones. So if I remove that one, and then, wait, what if I just delete all of these, because I will probably not need them. So if I remove this, oh, now there's just black. Track feedback. Yeah. Twitch alerts. Goodbye. Man, that's such a mess. So, how do we test this now? Can I test it somehow? No idea. Toma. Anyway, yeah, if there's gonna be more donations or anything, then I'll see if that works or not. I don't think I have any more. I just have alerts. There's nothing here. There's nothing there. Nothing here. There's nothing there either. Yeah, so now it should work. Well, whatever. Sorry, I'm kind of disappointed because I was preparing these alerts and I was like, oh, this is gonna be so good, and then I missed it. So these chords lead into... See, that worked. Thank you. Thank you for the host. Yeah, hosting worked before, and it worked again, but rating somehow didn't work. Lame. Very lame. Anyway, I'll stop complaining. I'll keep explaining this thing. So we go into a breakdown section over here. So really just low passing the bass lines and then fading the sub out here with that automation. That controls the sub volume and nothing else. Really important to fade out the sub, because otherwise there's just that hard transition with that sub going on. Especially with that high note. So without that, it's just really booming out. Doesn't sound good. Same D&B break as from over there. Yeah. And then we go to that breakdown, which really has just the same lead melody as this one. Alright, I'll just go in here and let's see, raids. Raider minimum 0. No. Everything here is set up correctly. You can't raid without people on your stream? Oh. Yeah, disabled custom CSS, man, not the entire thing. Raid alerts disabled. Oh! Well, that's a revelation! That's fucking stupid. Oh! Yeah, that's great. Yeah, awesome. Well, that explains a lot. That explains why I never got any notification. Jesus. But why is it disabled by default? Because I didn't change this. Okay, raids enabled. General settings enabled. Follows enabled. Descriptions enabled. Donations enabled. Right. Everything's enabled now. If it doesn't work now, then I'll just be mad. So we got that same thing coming in. And then I'm just playing a really high note to lead into that. You can see like the chords are being automated so that they disappear completely. Lead comes back in really eerily after that silence part over there. Just that moment where it's completely silent. I like that moment a lot. And it gives me some high end to lead into this next instrument. And that instrument is just a piano. So I'm not really sure how to explain the writing on this, because I kind of just did it by ear and by feeling it. So I guess you music theory nerds can figure out what that is. But I'm adding more to it over here. And I'm really just arpeggiating the same chord down. And I mean, I'm not going to bother trying to figure out what chord that is. You can do that. But I'm kind of just arpeggiating up here. It just has this mysterious feel to it. Like, what? Like, just kind of scary, creepy. It's kind of the same chord, but without that. Well, no, it's not the same chord, but whatever. So kind of a descending melody here. So that's no, that's not the same thing. It's hard to explain this because I'm really the thing. Well, Cluda, if you're gonna raid with one person, then it won't pop up because it's not a raid, right? It's only a core. It's only a raid if you have like 5 people or 10 people or something. It's not really a raid if one person is there. So that's probably why it didn't trigger. But I don't know, get some popular guys to raid me and then we'll see. But anyway, yeah. So I'm automating the pedal here, so that's why this sounds a little crazy when I play all these in a row. So that over here is definitely major. Fuck. That's how I practice piano. So that is the thing. So you go up like... I wish I could talk about the writing behind this more, but I can't because I just wrote that. Like, I heard that in my head and I was like, yeah, that's what we're doing now. This is so cool. Now I wrote it and here we are. I can't really explain it. It's kind of sorry. I wish I could do better than that, but I just can't. As for the piano itself, this is the Giant, of course. Whoops. Sounds pretty cool. Reverb on it, of course, to make it spacier. Reverb also adds 30 decibels of gain. 60 decibels of gain, apparently. Then pulling down the low end and increasing the high end so that the higher notes actually are a little brighter. And then more of that. And then compression. So this is just crazy. I'm not sure why I did that, but that's just what I ended up having. All of the gain, like literally every single gain knob is just maxed out on this. There's no real reason for that. It's just that I somehow started really quietly, and then this kind of started making it work. Wait, I have this like string box thing, right? Yep. Okay, so I have that disabled right now because on stream that's just a little too much because it uses like 50% of my CPU. It's crazy. This kind of just adds some resonance to the whole thing, but it also, I think it has like this internal thing where it starts clipping. So that's why I turned the piano down all the way, and then I brought it back up in post after that. So yeah. Well, you can EQ anything any way you want. There's no rules. It's just that the final result has to be good. Your EQ can literally just look like, I don't know, like, if your EQ looks like, I don't know, like that, like, you know, if that just ends up being what you need, then you should do that. So whatever, like, that doesn't matter. Generally, you wouldn't want to make it too crazy, but here, if you have to highlight something or remove something like that, if you have to be surgical, then you have to do that. You can't just like not do it and then have the bad sound. Yeah, it doesn't matter how it looks, it just has to sound good. Although for most things, I wouldn't recommend that kind of EQ, right? So if you can do it differently, do it differently. I just happened to do it that way in my project because it worked. Anyway, continuing. So you might not have noticed that, but the same bass as from the first part over here is coming back over there. So now the cool thing on this bass is it's very velocity sensitive, so we can have a really soft bass fading into nothingness, but we can also have distorted angry bass over here, so it's like very quiet, but then whatever. Trying to illustrate what I mean with my voice. Piano and forte, fortissimo. Of course, some hits sprinkled throughout the entire thing to kind of make certain things more seem more important. The breathing sound comes back over here. So that's our second build-up section now. So almost everything here is stuff that's already been in the track once. This is just the acid bass from the first build-up. But I'm also doubling it up with that poly 6 bass that I'm using in the breakdowns. So that poly 6 there is usually just in the breakdowns, but here I'm adding it into the build-up. And if you really pay close attention to it, you can tell that it's playing different notes than the other synths. So that's really just an artistic choice where I drop certain notes an octave to make the timbre different. So just a really strong change. So we have like a lighter sound in the first half and then a heavier sound in the second half. Really cool. So then we also have this. This is our first new instrument in that section. So this is really just saws again. Just saws with the filter. And a bunch of EQ, because without the EQ, it just wouldn't sound right. It wouldn't, without the EQ, it wouldn't have that kind of high-end focus. What's happening? Why did it work on a different stream, huh? Did something happen again and I missed it because of the freaking alert thing? Oh wow, it worked, but I can't see it. I only see text. What happened? Did I get rated again and it didn't show up? Talking to Shroom. I can't see Shroom in the chat. What? Am I hallucinating? Okay. I'm very confused right now. Let me just look over here. I guess I am hallucinating. Yeah, or maybe you're hallucinating. I'm gonna go with you're hallucinating. And then I'm using Fruit Limiter over here to... well, I'm really just using it as a limiter. Makes it sound a little ravier, a little punchier, I guess, instead of just being a saw pluck. So that gives it that... gives it that rave kind of feeling. And then I think I'm probably bringing in another octave on the high end of that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Like I'm bringing the noise up sweep, the string riser, strike. And this is new, kind of a sub impact from Vengeance. Good impact. Bunch of rising things. And this is probably the most important one. Just the cheesy gong. It's so good. And all these little details, they really can make a build-up feel a lot better. Just having all of this. If you don't have that, then it just feels kind of lame. So that goes into the second drop. And this is really just an exact copy of the first drop, except I'm using these. And these are really the same rave stabs as from this, except they don't have that delay. So over here on these rave stabs, I kind of have an effect going on with delay. So that delay is really important to the track. Without that delay, it would just sound dead. It's almost comical how bad it sounds. So over here I got that riding on top of the rest. And this has a lot of stuff on it. Let's go through it. A reverb. Whoops. That's very loud. So it's actually a really short sound, a really stabby sound, but then that reverb adds a little bit of decay to it. So more interesting. Disperser to kind of squeeze it. And then Saturn. And the Saturn here is really just bit crushing it very subtly to kind of get a retro digital sampling kind of sound. So that's really just slight sample rate reduction to make it sound older. Then EQ, of course. That's a big change, because it runs into here and it gets distorted if I don't EQ it. So yeah, that shapes the sound a lot. Then more limiting, of course. And sidechain. So that punches through here. Yeah. The rest has already been explained for this part because it's really the same as the other one. So then over here, that's where it changes into that big final drop part. That pattern, and I just pitched that first slight note up an octave. So it's the same thing but an octave higher. And then I'm also modulating it with that EQ, which I've shown before. So that EQ right here is responsible for that awesome sound. And then over here, I'm willing to bet that's actually the same patch. Yep. What is it? Whoops, sorry. It's the same patch, but I'm going up. So we were going like this before. That's what we had on the first drop. And then on the other one, I'm actually going up an octave. So that's how you take it. You can take the same sound as you had in the first drop and just push it up an octave and it sounds more intense. And then over here, that's also new. I'm using that orchestra thing from the first drop, but I'm also using it to double up these later hits. Whoops. So layering all of this with these chords too. Just creates more complexity in the high end, and that gives it a lot more drive, a lot more spectacle. Makes it sound a lot more intense than the first part. So, I don't know, the sidechain kind of runs out of whack over here. Not sure why. So then the same thing here is happening as it does at the end of the first drop. So chords come in. The difference is, I think, yeah, they come in major here, like F major 7, and, well, just F major, and then they come in as F minor over here. So that makes it different from the part over here. Also, the reason this is F minor is because the chords I have here are minor as well. So it's just so that this doesn't clash. So this comes in and soothes itself into the track. And minor creates a lot of drama, so this is very good. Also, another thing you can notice is that I'm kind of pitching the same chord up and down here, and I'm using the same theme over here up in these rave stabs. So generally, if you have a method like pitching chords up and down and pitching things up and down without really writing them any different way, then you should carry that method into different instruments of your song, so that it becomes a theme and not just, oh, I was too lazy to write chords. So over here, now we're trying to relieve the tension, so from minor to major. So you can hear that very well in the song, how the tension just goes away over here. Very nice. And then the same kind of thing with the low pass and just elements leaving, and then we arrive at the final outro section. So just a simple piano outro. I have the chords going on up here with the pad chords. And up to here it's really the same chords as over here in the intro. But then over here, well, actually I'm using the exact same chords as I am over here in that one. That's the same pattern as that one. It's interesting. But then because of the piano stuff, it's being recontextualized, so we've got a major chord here. And because there's a lower piano note, that one, that major chord, because we have that low piano note, we can't hear the low end of this as a fundamental, so now that becomes major. Like, that's what you effectively hear when you have that. So I'm not changing the pattern, but I'm recontextualizing it with that low piano note. So another thing you'll notice here with that piano is when I bring back the piano pattern from over here, there's a lot of parallels. So like, ends up becoming right, but because the timing is slightly delayed, I can now start, well, because it's major, first of all, like we start with a major chord over here, and then timing is a little later than the other one, so I can start ascending, and now we're in a totally different key. I just really wanted to have these last notes be really unresolved and really eerie and kind of make you wonder is there more? Like, is there gonna be more after this? Just like a cliffhanger. So at that point, I didn't really have any other track done. So this was kind of just like, I left the cliffhanger and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if something else came in here? And then quickly from having that single Space Odyssey track that I have here, I went on to make more stuff and like more introductions and more transitions and everything. FW Tactical 1R asks, what is that piano? It's a contract. It's a contract. It's a contact library called The Giant, which you can get, not for free, but you can get it. And similarly, these notes are getting recontextualized by that low. Sorry. Oh my god. Okay, so that's recontextualizing. Recontextualizing the rest. Very nice, very nice. Of course, I'm automating the pedal on it so that these low decays get cleaned up. Yeah, so I can start talking about the effects section in a second. But I should probably go for a quick BRB right now, because I kinda need to take care of something important. I'll just let the track itself play for a second, and I'll come back in about, I don't know, 2 minutes or something. So yeah, I'll be right back. I have returned. Sorry, I suck at transitions. Anyway, yeah. So I guess now that all of the instruments are explained, I can get into the effects section of this track. Is my mic on? Am I live? Hello? I'm really wondering about something. So for example, 2 days ago, like last week, we had a lot more people in here than we have today. So I'm not complaining, but it's like wondering what's different today than it is on the other day. Because usually I'd have about 30 or 40 people in here or more, sometimes 50. But today it's really just like, I don't know, we're like 20 people, I think. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's not complaining. I'm just wondering what the reason is. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know. I'm always open to criticism, always open to improving Like maybe the timing is just bad, or maybe nobody's interested in the song or something. I don't know. Or yeah, maybe it's just good days, bad days. Who knows? Whatever. So the effects section on this. Just bad music. Yeah. It's probably bad music, you're right. So we got our first pad, effects kind of pad over here. Just this very atonal, spacey kind of sound. I took it from a sample pack from the 90s or something. I don't think I made that. That's from... Yeah, that's from an old sample pack. Then this over here. What this is basically... You put a mic into a piano, and then you start strumming all the piano strings. And then you get that sound. And these are sprinkled throughout the break, the build-up, the drop, and everywhere. So if you listen to the drop... It's full of these little strummy things. So, in the drop... You can barely notice that, but if it's not there, the track just sounds kind of dead and weird. So if I disable all of this stuff, these little horror things, then, like, if they're not there, it just sounds really dead. And now if I bring them back... It's so important to have small sounds like this everywhere. Like... These are all just really small effects, rising samples. So for example, over here I used that. That right there. Sorry, that. That's like a small, kind of like a War of the Worlds kind of horn sound, a really low horn. And I pitched it so that it's in line with the drum fills, the bass fill up here, like... Same note. So that's kind of like a build up to that bass fill. Then also a phaser opening up, kind of like a futuristic kind of riser noise. And that's just the horror kind of strings going up sound. Various risers. So all of these combined make that big release moment with the bass growl that much better. So if I disable all of these up here, dead. But with it, so don't forget about that. If you have a track and you need a transition, you need air. Air is really important. This is all air, just like high-end risey stuff. Really, really important. It's also important that you cut the end of that off. Like, if you have any reverb on anything, like on that, you gotta cut that off instantly here. So everything cuts out over here, and all that's left is this growl. So yeah, it might seem a little tedious to really automate all the reverbs and everything in the song, but when you really get into automating everything properly like that, the big moments in your track start feeling that much better, that much more important. It's really good. So there's not much going on with effects over here. but then we have this, which is the same pad as at the start, but I'm bringing it in here as a transition from the bassy part to the melodic part. So having a bit of atonal stuff here fade in helps signify that there's a transition going on. Then over here, this is really just rising up every time before that silent impact part. Super important. And then this, very simple, the same pad. See, if the effect section here is not as complex as in the other ones. Over here, I've got this bird. That bird makes some appearances throughout the entire track. So like over here, as the track goes down into the breakdown. Very hard to notice, but it's there. And over here. Just very nice to have it in there. You caught the bird. Well, I hope you feed it enough. So this is actually a really strange sound that I did in a different project again. So that's really just in the background of everything else. So this is all just happening back there. If I turn this off, you might notice it, you might not. So anyway, what this is I'm actually just putting a string, contact string preset into this thing called Lex String Box again. So this over here. And that's creating these random kind of top string harmonics. And these really thicken up the high end and make it sound shimmery and make it sound like something's happening. I'm also using a reverb and a chorus on these, so without the effects. Without the effects, it's kind of a little bit more mono, and with the effects on, it starts moving a little more. So that's why I like chorus. It kind of starts moving things around and puts them more to the side. Yeah, that's it for these effects over there. Over here, I'm bringing in the same horror effects as I had over there. So this is literally just copy-pasted over. You shouldn't be afraid to copy-paste, but you have to do it right. You can't just copy-paste everything, but with stuff like this, really, if it worked the first time, it's going to work the second time. And it also adds a bit of predictability. So basically the only thing that's different in drop 2 is that I'm bringing these stabs in, and then over here, this guy, and of course, that shit. So I think that about wraps it up for this track. There's some reverse sweeps here again. We've gone through these before. Pretty much it. Yeah. I think that's the track. Yeah, it's gonna get old someday. Okay, yeah, I guess now would be the time where you just ask me questions about this thing or other questions if you want. I'm totally open for. Oh, yeah, I just realized I never updated the description here. It's not track feedback, it's actually like a track breakdown. I never updated this. Yeah, I should have probably done that. But it doesn't matter. I don't think anybody was really confused about what this is. Yeah. I guess I'll remember that next time. Maybe it's like these little things that keep people away from the stream when they get confused and they're like, "Oh, how do I send my track in? What the hell?" So they think I'm feedbacking something right now, but it's actually my own track. Well, whatever. So, the question: how did you make that thing in pattern 31, though? I don't even know what pattern 31 is. Let's go there. Pattern 31. Oh, that. I completely missed this. Whoops. Are you serious? Alright, sure. So, 31. Oops. This is really just like a little harmer sound. Let me see how I did this. So I have a phaser on this, and the phaser is being, I don't think the phaser is being, the width of the phaser is being automated, so the width here. And I think that's basically it for that sound. There's some unison on it and some distortion, but that's what's causing the sound, basically. So that up there is really just that. Nothing going on here. Are you going to upload the stream to YouTube? This needs to be saved for future generations to learn from. Let's see. I have all the VODs saved on Twitch, and I can export these VODs over to YouTube. I think I exported the last one, the last track breakdown over to YouTube, but I haven't exported the feedback stream because it got a little crazy at the end, so I'm not sure if I should, but maybe I should export it. Let's see. So, Hentai Folders asks, what does it sound like when you slow it down to 80? Let's find out. Yeah, most of the effect sounds are not going to be in time now because they're not pitched to be in time. Yeah, very anticlimactic build up there. Did we just crash a fell? help? Help? Help me, please. I have no idea how to fix this. Help me, stop. Help. That was a bad idea. I'm never doing that again. That was dumb. That was stupid. That was criminal. Jesus. What was even the original BPM? 108? 110? 100? Yeah, 100. Oh my god. Yeah, that was not fun. That was garbage. There's gotta be more weird stuff that you can do. Like maybe, I don't know. Wait. Yeah, this thing. Just start messing with this. Like, this is M Transformer, and it's just the weirdest, like... Yeah, this is weird. No, it's not a Foreman thing. I guess it's like, it remaps everything. So like, I can't really explain it, but like, let's say this is like 20 hertz and this is 20 kilohertz. So now I can move this down here, and now all the 20 hertz stuff is remapped so that it's distorted towards that, like that. So, hard to explain, but basically, it's kind of like changing the contrast in Photoshop. So, so if I put this at the bottom, to the top, and that at the bottom, now the highest frequencies in the track are being pushed down. Like, the highest frequencies in the track are now being pushed down to the bottom, and the lowest are being pushed to the top. So it's basically inverted. I'm not sure how this is gonna sound, but probably not pretty. So I'll lower the volume a little bit before I play this. Yep, that's weird. And if I put it in the middle, like a straight line, then everything is just mapped to that one frequency and nothing else. So that sounds pretty messy. So I guess you're not really supposed to use this on a full track, you're supposed to use it on individual sounds. But anyway, yeah. We should have a stream with just that. You should use this song mapped to one frequency as a sample in your next tune. I don't know if it would really do anything. Probably not. But yeah. Amazing. Anyway, I'm not sure if there are more questions about this track. Don't think I really have anything else that I need to get off my chest related to this song. All the side chaining is done with Love Filter, of course. So I drew these in manually, all these curves. And on the master, I have just a bunch of EQing and some compression. The most special thing here is this guy. So this is M Spectral Dynamics, and I use this to limit the high end, kind of. So when there are things poking out in the high end, this acts kind of like an EQ that pulls down like every single individual frequency. So if you have kind of individual high end peaks that peak out, then this pulls down every peak individually with a small EQ band. And then that creates a very different sound than if you were compressing it or if you were just limiting it. That really, I can't really explain how it sounds. I don't think it's really comparable to anything else. Just very nice, and I use it on a lot of tracks. So I can recommend this, M Spectral Dynamics, very good for mastering. But yeah, I think that really sums it up for this tune. So, I'm not sure, I still have some energy. Let's see how long we're up. We've been up for 2 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to do feedback or if you want to do something else. I could do some tune feedback, although I'm not sure how many people are here. Let me see. I kind of don't really want to leave you guys just like that. I think there's something more that we can do with this. I was kind of preparing for a much longer stream than this, with a lot more people, a lot more action. But it was very laid back, very relaxing, not much going on. Volant Speedcore? How would that work? Nice. Yeah, FL. FL is totally quitting on me. BPM is 200 plus. But 200 is not even that fast. So it's like